Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Nobel Prize-winning economists are issuing new warnings about the U.S. economy under Donald Trump. We will get to that in a moment. First, the latest reports on the U.S. trade deficit are disturbing.
The trade deficit for the month of December, $70.3 billion, significantly higher than the $53.0 billion reported for the month of November.
Headline, Washington Post, U.S. runs record trade deficit in goods despite Trump's tariffs policy. Quote, the U.S. merchandise trade deficit hit a record $1.2 trillion last year, despite President Donald Trump's promise to eliminate it by imposing the highest tariffs in 8 decades on foreign-made products. Thursday's Commerce Department report represents the first full-year assessment of the president's ambitious reordering of global trade. The persistence of the deficit in the face of steep new taxes on imports from China, the European Union, and scores of other nations reflects the limits of Trump's preferred policy tool, economists said.
Add into that wholesale inventories up 0.2 and retail inventories flat on the month. Those are not particularly great numbers, and this matters because these are the last 3 data points that will go into fourth quarter GDP.
In other words, gross domestic product, or total U.S. economic activity under Donald Trump, is facing more hurdles. Two-time Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz was asked on CNBC this simple, big-picture question.
From your perspective, how you see it, where are we?
Not great right now, and the prospects are that it's going to get worse.
Our economic prospects are going to get worse. Stiglitz pointed to the on-again, off-again, on-again Trump tariffs that have injected uncertainty into U.S. business planning, and he noted that Trump's purpose of making foreign-made goods more expensive so that producers move their factories to the United States has not worked.
The whole idea was to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States.
Right.
You know what's happened to jobs in manufacturing in the last year?
They're down.
They're down.
They're down.
They're down. Did he succeed?
Might be a lag. Might be
a lag, but they're down. So very clear he didn't succeed over the last year in bringing back manufacturing jobs.
And on top of Trump not bringing back manufacturing jobs, Trump has also forced most American consumers to pay more for the basics. This is what is known as the affordability crisis.
So if you look at who is paying these tariffs, it is lower-end people in terms of percentage of their incomes.
in terms of
it's regressive. That's
yes,
why we
in
say
terms
it's
of
regressive.
I know. I had people
So-
lecturing me like I don't understand that, but yes,
Yeah,
I understand.
so that's why it's a bad regressive. And you might say if there was some economic benefit, like on the other end, we're creating low-end jobs.
That's what Hassett says.
We
The income's
would
gonna go up.
weigh
Yeah.
that in.
Yeah.
But I mentioned the very large decline in manufacturing jobs. The decline in blue-collar jobs is even larger. And you look at where is the increase in jobs in the United States? Healthcare. Does that have anything to do with the tariffs? No.
The increase in healthcare jobs has to do with increased demand for healthcare from a population that is getting older. The demographic shift in the United States is clear. So while service sector jobs are rising under Donald Trump, the number of manufacturing and blue-collar jobs have dropped. It means the production of U.S. goods has dropped, and the trade deficit is getting larger. As the Washington Post reports, the trade deficit reflecting the gap between the goods Americans buy from abroad and the value of U.S. goods sold overseas is driven largely by domestic economic policies in the view of mainstream economists. The sizable U.S. budget deficit, a sign of a nation living beyond its means, inevitably draws in large amounts of foreign goods, despite tariffs, they know. Tariffs are not the dial to turn if you want to change the overall balance of trade, said Erica York, Vice President of Federal Tax Policy with the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation. And never mind trade issues, U.S. budget deficits create another problem. The overall debt load the United States is carrying keeps getting worse. And that means a larger and larger percentage of overall U.S. government spending must be dedicated just to paying interest on the debt. A few months ago, PBS explained this with the help of pizza.
Here's the pie back in 2015. Interest on the debt, a low-cal 6% slice. But today, 13%, more than double the share just a decade ago.
Every year is rising and putting a strain on our finances.
Head of the devoutly nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, Phil Swagel.
And that means those are funds that don't go to anything else. Someone wants more money for national security, someone wants more money for tax relief or for social benefits. The resources paying the debt are excluded from that. They're not available for those other purposes.
In other words, because of growing interest on the debt, there is less money for whatever else lawmakers want to spend on. And adding to the policy pressures, the people who own the U.S. debt or the U.S. treasuries, this includes foreigners and foreign governments.
And so the interest that we pay on bonds owned by people in other countries represents resources that are going from the United States out of the country to other people. And that amount is rising as well. And so that's part of the fiscal challenge.
And the challenge gets even greater when the U.S. economy stalls or sputters, as it is doing now. By contrast, in the late 1990s, during the Clinton administration, the economy was so strong and brought in so much taxpayer revenue that the government ran a surplus and managed to pay down part of the debt. Now, the debt under Trump and the deficit, they keep rising fast. It has reached nearly $32 trillion, with each American family share at around $240,000. Those are frightening numbers to consider. And on top of the government debt, individual debt, the money Americans owe on credit cards and bank loans, has also just hit new records.
A new report from the New York Fed says total household debt reached a record $18.6 trillion from July through September. And here's how that all breaks down. The biggest chunk of debt, $13 trillion, comes from mortgages, which is not surprising given how expensive it is to buy a home. Auto loans and student loans are next at about $1.7 trillion. Then you got credit card debt at $1.2 trillion. All of those are record highs.
Record highs for personal debt, record highs for U.S. government debt. And despite the Trump promises of a new era of economic strength thanks to his tariffs, the indicators are getting worse, not better. And whether the reports are about U.S. manufacturing or trade deficits, the numbers, as economists point out, keep going in the wrong direction. By the way, even MAGA conservatives like Tim Pool are accusing Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi of engaging in a cover-up over the Epstein scandal.
I ain't cutting Trump any slack. Now that we know that they've covered up the co-conspirator documents, there's a document saying that they were investigating co-conspirators Epstein. There's photos and videos of minors and children. Dan Bongino was like, look, a lot of these things were hearsay and, fake tips that were uncorroborated. All of that is true, but there's still no excuse for them not exposing these deep, dark, corrupt pedos.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular was from Chris, who wrote, "Great coverage and content from Rebel HQ." Chris, thank you. We appreciate it. And to all of you who want to see our coverage, when you go to your YouTube homepage, hit the like button and subscribe. I look forward to reading your comments about the Trump trade deficit getting worse and hitting a new record high. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.